Activate the reverse migration Santa.
These guys, they're naughty. And what do you do to the naughty ones?
I give them a lump of coal.
Give them their lumps.
Use the sledgehammer of remigration.
I want to begin with kicking off like that's the what, now with the why. You know, the what is really important in any business deal, in anything in life. The why behind the what is critical to understand. Like the motivation for making these things happen, as we have relayed yesterday. There is no reason to bring hundreds of thousands of Somalis to our country. No one has ever made that argument. If you want to make that argument, please do. You're welcome on the show anytime. We'll have any guest come on the show and make an argument as to how the mass importation of Somalis is good for the country. And I'd be happy to counterfactual all of that with the data that covers everything from inbreeding, first and second cousin marriages, to cases of child rape, which is horrifying and have skyrocketed in Minnesota. Oh, and by the way, the explanation for that, the legal explanation that they have for this recent child rapist in Minnesota, this is I know we have a recent tweet on this, is that he hasn't yet integrated from Somali culture. That's the explanation. The explanation is he isn't integrated yet enough. This is like a libs of TikTok, guys. I know that I sent it in the show notes, but I know we have a ton of stuff going on. That the Somali, and please, I didn't know I was going to go here, but we got to show this. So there's this man who was arrested for child rape and the abduction of a 12-year-old girl, and the nonprofit defense from the Muslim Nonprofit Center of St. Paul, Minnesota, the defense for him is that he hasn't yet assimilated to American culture. Of course, what's not being said there is that this is just Somali culture that's being brought here. And this is something that, of course, does happen in Somalia. There is obscene amounts of child abductions that occur there. There are child brides in Somalia. This is a regular occurrence. And so we got a mugshot and everything of this monster. And the explanation is that he's just yet not integrated enough into American society. He's just following the old Somali practices of child abduction and rape. So don't you worry, guys. Really great billboard for why these individuals must be brought into our country. Why are they brought into our country? With every immigration decision, the question needs to be asked, why are you coming to America? How will you integrate into Western civilization? What is, you just pass, you passed it, Klein. I know, guys. It's so hard to it's so hard to do these things. Here, I'll be able to find it in like 2 seconds. Hold on. There you go. All right, there you go. Okay, boom. There it is. Islamic Center writes community support letter for Somali convicted of raping a 12-year-old, and the support letter from them they back him. They back his actions. Is saying he's just bringing Somali culture to Minnesota. Do you understand? Just bringing it to Minnesota. This is what we're importing. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again. Yesterday is still very much flu-like symptoms, so let me say it as clear as I possibly can. I don't want to be the daddy of the world. I don't want to be the police of the world. I don't want an American empire. I don't want America to conquer the earth, okay? I don't want that. I like America as it is. What they do in Somalia, in that godforsaken part of the earth, it's actually not. I mean, if they actually ran their country, it could be one of the most profitable countries in Africa, frankly. Has this really pristine coastline. They could do like enormous amount of shipbuilding and shipping out of there if they actually knew how to run a country. if it wasn't just a massive criminal and terroristic enterprise in the third world, because Somalis live there, because there's things that are like deep into cultures. There are elements of the third world that make the third world the third world. And you mustn't bring them to our country because you'll get the third world. That's what's happening. That's what's happening here. I know that it's naughty to say that, but the reality is Somalia itself is so beautifully positioned to be a central shipping hub for the earth. Where it is located could be one of the most profitable, pristine, and well-run countries in all of Africa. Instead, it is the single poorest and most dysfunctional, lowest IQ, highest coefficient for inbreeding, terroristic and piracy capital of the earth. Instead of it choosing to engage in all of the trade that goes on right outside of its shores, Somalia chooses to instead piracy the ships because of their culture. And so then you need to ask the question, would we ever want to bring that nation here? Would that nation work as a state? Would that nation work as a state in America? Would Syria work as a state in America? Would Afghanistan work as a state in America? Because that's what you're doing. Somalia isn't the land. Somalia is the people. If you brought every Somali into America, let's say you brought every Somali, you snapped your finger, and every one of them was in Minnesota. That would be the Democrats' dream. You would just bring all of Somalia. If they wouldn't immediately become Minnesotans, it'd be Somalia in Minnesota. The landmass doesn't matter. New peoples would move into the land, and it would be totally different. Take all the Italian people, take everyone from Italy, move them into Somalia, then that would be New Italy. It's the people, the culture, the language, the practices, the traditions, the religion, most especially. This is what you are bringing into the country when you're allowing open and forever and infinity immigration from the third world. You are creating the third world in the first world, denigrating the first world into second world, and then eventually third world problems. You can see that obviously in the crime statistics here. This is what happens. This is from Denmark, but it's reflective of every Western country that brings in people from nations that you don't want to recreate in your country. And what you can see here at the very top of this chart is the top 20 countries that commit all of the crimes in these nations are Muslim countries. That is a matter of fact. It is incompatible with the West. Islam at scale is incompatible with the West. Do not believe in freedom of speech. Do not believe in freedom of religion. Do not believe in separation of power, separation of church and state. They believe the church is the state. And they do approve of and agree with rapes, abuses, criminal activity against the infidel and against Christian populations. And that is proven time and time and time again in all of the data. It's empirical. And if that data offends you, then you need to really rethink your worldview because you're not living in reality. And so we ranted all day yesterday about these problems. There is no such thing as assimilation in these cultures. These cultures are so perversely different from the Anglo-Europeans that founded America and that created the systems and structures that uphold our nation. There is no integration. And there's a reason why they're in Minnesota. The reason why they're in Minnesota is because that's where 100,000 other Somalis are. And they're creating miniature Somalia there, along with their customs, which their customs are piracy. Instead of building modern architecture for ships, they would rather pirate Chinese, Indian, American vessels that flow through the Straits of Hormuz. And that is the type of culture that they are bringing here to our nation. As you can see here, House, Treasury, Small Business Association, now launching probes into billions of dollars of fraud and criminal referrals set. There is a whole of government approach now to this. Every single organ of the Trump administration, this was just announced while we were live, Small Business Association, Kelly Loeffler, who's been live on the show multiple times in studio with us, numerous individuals and nonprofits indicted in the $1 billion Minnesota COVID fraud scandal, including Feeding Our Futures, receive SBA and PPP loans, in addition to other state and federal funding. And today I have ordered an investigation into the network of Somali organizations and executives implicated in these schemes. Despite Governor Walz's efforts to obstruct it, SBA will continue this work. Department of Transportation now investigating Minnesota Somali fraud. You know, this is like very much Saul Alinsky style tactics. You must pick a target. You must pick a target. You can't, there's so much fraud in the criminal immigration system. You can't just have everyone just going all over the place and doing everything. You have to pick a target. This is the target, ladies and gentlemen. What they've done in Minnesota. Department of Transportation, please. Minnesota audit. 33% of Minnesota's out-of-state driver's license were issued illegally. Secretary Duffy has put Minnesota on notice. Massive public safety scandal in Minnesota. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, has been caught on tape saying something that is remarkable, that sort of like cuts directly to the point of all of this. Because again, as we laid out on our show for a straight hour yesterday, there is a Somali immigrant costs the taxpayers of your state upwards of $30,000 per immigrant, net negative on your state's funding and infrastructure. They cost, obviously, in terms of criminality, as we have demonstrated, where in Denmark, 62% of Somalis have committed a violent crime by the age of 30. 62%. So you're bringing in some of the most criminal element, some of the most fraudulent element. You're bringing in people who are a net negative and drag on the taxpayers, who, by all available numbers, they earn approximately $35,000 a year on average if they work at all. They are habitual renters. They are not investing in property values in your state, buying homes, creating wealth, creating infrastructure, putting down roots. 86% of Somalis in Minnesota are renters. And they're committing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in fraud. Add to that the inbreeding coefficient, the lack of English speaking, the inability to adhere or assimilate to cultural norms. And you're looking at like probably the last population on earth you'd ever want to bring into your neighborhood. The last. I mean, you're talking the last, okay? You know, contrast that with like Japanese culture. We're like, you know, there's a lot of little Japans all over America, right? Like these people are never trying to like usurp our political system, fraud and scam their way into or out of, you know, mass amounts of wealth. You never hear that. They'll make, it's like a suit, you know, make like a sushi store. It's like you never hear about that. There are certain cultures where this is something that is part of the culture. Piracy is part of the culture in Somalia. Funding of terrorism is part of the culture in Somalia, and that's what's been happening in Minnesota. So the point is that no, not all cultures are equal. No, that's not true. Not all cultures are created equal. All people are made in the image of God. That's what I believe in my religion. All people need to be treated with dignity, but that doesn't mean we need to be imbeciles or suicidal. Not all cultures are created equal. And so why would you bring this culture into your relatively peaceful, snow-covered Midwestern state? There is no upside. Until, of course, Keith Ellison literally says the upside on tape. Keith Ellison caught on tape explaining that, you know, if somebody tries to investigate you, I will protect you. You just need to make sure that I get enough votes. You need to make sure that you are voting for me. You need to make sure that I become eventually governor of the state of Minnesota. And Keith Ellison, famously the man who was caught with an Antifa handbook, anti-communist, anti-fascist, Marxist handbooks, like promoting them during the BLM riots, the man who let all of Minneapolis burn. There you go. There's the actual photo. I mean, it's like, well done, Klein, man, that was fast. It's like they're not being shy about what they're planning on doing to Minnesota. Minnesota better wake up, man. Here's Keith Ellison on tape explaining why would you bring so many Somalis to Minnesota. Here we go.
To stand up for each other and make sure that we get some things fixed.
Absolutely.
I do recognize there's a problem, but what I really need to move to be effective on your behalf is to get specific.
Absolutely.
And it's like, you know, this sister on this day is having this problem on this, and then I can call up and be like, what is the problem? And let me tell you, just being able to say, just getting the question, just getting the inquiry from the AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off. It's like, oh, because they're doing this under cover of darkness.
Ask a Somali on the street in Minneapolis what they think about the state. You know, we played it yesterday, the Afghan migrant who said he hates Dallas and he's just there to kill. You know, he says it on camera. It's one thing to think it in your heart. It's a totally different thing to have it metastasize and come right out of your mouth. Listen to this.
Comfortable sometimes because when I drive, when I'm sitting somewhere, not comfortable like before.
She says the president's recent focus on the Somali community is unnerving.
What he said, we've affected all communities. We know some people, they make fraud, but not all.
We know some people make fraud. We don't report them or anything. Some people make fraud. That's just fine. I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel comfortable. It's not America's job for you to feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable here. Well, you know, that's probably because America is so antithetical to your culture. And I mean, we're running out of, like, we're frankly don't have enough time in the show to go through the incompatibility with Somali culture versus Western Christendom culture. Let's just say we've discovered the reason, actually, why there are so many Somalis in Minneapolis. Minnesota was very, very quickly turning into a red state. You could see sure as, you know, Minnesota was one of those funny little, like, you know, Democrat, socialist, blue states for a long time, much like a lot of the South was sort of like blue dog Democrat, they used to call it. Minnesota was teetering towards a 50-50 state and a swing state. And Democrats couldn't have that. So Democrats bring in populations, import populations that can be fully controlled, that can be part of a fraudulent scheme and a criminal enterprise to turn and flip votes and even to create votes, as this news report details from Minneapolis. Here we go.
Allegations in a Minnesota voter fraud case that first came to light this summer. 2 people pleaded guilty in federal court to being paid to help register voters. In all, 500 to 600 fraudulent voter registration applications were submitted to election officials in offices in 13 Minnesota counties. Esme Murphy has been following this case, and she joins us now. Esme?
Hi there, Frank. It was some sharp election workers in Carver County who realized the names and addresses on the voter registration forms did not match with any county residents. Prosecutors charged 2 people with 1 count each of voter registration fraud. According to the charging documents, the 2 were paid by an unnamed foundation to help register voters. The 2 defendants pled guilty this summer and have since moved out of state. The scope of the 2-year FBI and state investigation was not previously known.
And it's very significant that they said today it was 13 counties, between 500 and 600 fake voter registrations. And that's just from 2 of the independent contractors that worked with this group.
The investigation involves scouring hundreds of records.
On guidance from the FBI, the voter registration applications were mailed directly to the election lead, and instructions were shared to use gloves when handling the forms.
In testimony before the committee, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon says the system designed to catch voter fraud worked.
This is a case about individuals who conspired to submit false voter registration applications. This is not a case about fraudulent votes. And this is ultimately a case of the system working.
How many were in the system is challenged.
Republican Committee Chair Kristen Robbins, who is running for governor, says she has additional concerns that the unnamed foundation that paid the 2 workers is funded by state taxpayer dollars.
99% of their budget comes from state grants. So this is a group that the state is funding and that then went out and did these voter registrations.
Now, the hearing left a lot of people, including us, with a lot of questions that were not answered. One of the big ones.
We can go off on this forever.